Welcome to What to Watch Wednesdays, hosted by someone's favorite film buff, Nathan. I love movies and I want to share that with you. From old originals to cult classics and foreign favorites, along with straight up drivel, WWW is your place for all things movies. Stick around and we'll leave you with a movie to watch over the weekend with your family or that special someone. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. 88.1 The Burg, here at Music Central. My name is Nathan. Welcome to What to Watch Wednesdays. For those of you who listen to the show regularly, thank you for returning this week. Last week we ran into some technical issues here on the show, but I should have gotten them figured out by now. If not, fingers crossed that it all turns out okay. I'm positive it will, honestly. I'm very hyped because that just means I get to talk about a director that I really like, again, without all the technical difficulties. So, win-win situation. Tonight, we are going to be doing what I was going to talk about last week until I ran into some stuff, which is the Outrage Trilogy by Japanese director Takeshi Kitano, one of my favorite directors of all time, and someone that I honestly look up to in the filmmaking industry. I just wanted to cover something very basic of his, specifically the Outrage Trilogy, because it's a trilogy and it's easy to cover because you can really just kind of sell it on, here's 3 movies, they're all called Outrage in some way, shape, or form, and they're all part of a series. So it makes it easier to tie things in together. So naturally, we're going to start with the first Outrage from 2010. We'll go on to Beyond Outrage from 2012 and close out the night with Outrage Coda from 2017. I'm very excited for this show. I want to just get right into it, but we have to take a quick break for some music first, so stick around for that. 88.1 The Burg, your Music Central. Welcome back to What to Watch Wednesdays. My name is Nathan, and we are going to jump into the first movie on our watch list tonight, which is Outrage from 2010, available on Tubi. I sound so official right now, I should really stop talking like I'm an army general. Anyways, so, as I said at the beginning, we are going to be taking a look at the Outrage Trilogy, directed by, written by, and edited by Takeshi Kitano. Yes, all 3 of them were directed, written, and edited by Takeshi Kitano. He's a bit of an auteur when it comes to directors, and that's why I love him so much. But I'm getting ahead of myself, and I promised myself I wouldn't do that anymore. So I've broken a promise. I'm very sorry, me. Can you forgive me? Me? I don't know where I'm going with this, but it's really, really funny. At any rate, so the Outrage Trilogy is a series of Yakuza movies. It started with Outrage, otherwise known as Outrage: The Way of the Yakuza. When I looked on Wikipedia, it wasn't listed as the Way of the Yakuza, or that was its subtitle or anything. It was just called Outrage, and yet every single poster I see says The Way of the Yakuza on it in some way, shape, or form. Not every single one, but a significant portion of them. So I don't know. I think the world is just an illusion right now and everything is a lie. But moving on from that, the Outrage Trilogy is essentially Japanese Yakuza movies to the extreme. They are very much just hardcore Yakuza movies, very male-dominated, and at the center of all of it is the character Otomo, who's basically an underling who gets wrapped up in this entire dramatic scheme in the first movie, ends up being thrown in jail in the second movie, and ends up getting out and going on a complete rampage in the third one. Now, that's kind of a loose description of what happens in these movies, because the biggest issue I have with the Outrage Trilogy, and it's a very bad sign that I have such a big issue with it on the first movie, but the biggest thing I have to say about all of these movies is that the plot is too complicated. What I just gave you is the Cliff Notes version. The Cliff Notes version of the original movie, the first Outrage movie, it is about Otomo, whatever his name is, however his name is pronounced in Japanese. I wouldn't know because I don't speak Japanese, but Otomo, played by Takeshi Kitano, hold on to that, we'll get back to that in just a second, is the leader of a subordinate group of Yakuza, a family of Yakuza, because it's a family business. It's like the mob. It literally is just the mob in Japan. But he's a leader of the Otomo family, who are a subordinate Yakuza family to the Sanokai Yakuza. And on orders from the Sanokai, they go and confront the Muraze family, I believe, is the name of it, because someone in the Sanokai family has connections to someone in the Muraze family, and the only reason I am telling you all of this is to get it into your head how needlessly complicated the plot is for the first movie in the series. And trust me, it gets worse from here. And that is the Cliff Notes. That is the Cliff Notes version. I cannot go any deeper into that, or we will be here for the next 5 minutes and it will just be about the plot. So just keep in mind that in order to actually enjoy watching the first Outrage movie, and by the extension, any of the other two, you have to focus your mind on something. And thankfully, and this is why I love Takeshi Kitano, thankfully, Takeshi Kitano himself stars as the quote-unquote main character of the series. I say quote-unquote because he's usually not in every single scene. It's not from his perspective, and he doesn't show up as much as I would like him to. But thank you, Takeshi, for casting yourself in this movie, because otherwise I would be confused, and I would have no idea where to go or where to look or where to turn. Thankfully, with Takeshi Kitano being in the movie, you can look at a poster of it, go, okay, that's the main character. He's played by the director, writer, and editor of these movies. Can I just watch him on screen and see what he does? And great news, you can absolutely do that. I would highly recommend doing that if you're going to watch the Outrage movies, because he's the most entertaining character. He's the hands down the funniest character, and it's funny because it's just watching Takeshi Kitano, the literal like guy behind the entire series, walk around and not care about what's going on in the story. He doesn't care. Otomo does not care about what's going on in the story, and that makes it infinitely funnier. And that makes me like Takeshi Kitano even more, because I feel like I could make a good theory that Takeshi Kitano wrote the first movie to be so convoluted just so that he could play the main character and walk around and go, I don't care about any of this, guys. Come on, just get to the next thing. I don't care. Where's my money? Where's my money? So there's that aspect of it. Honestly, I get so ahead of myself when talking about this kind of series, because it's so fun to jump ahead and just talk about all the nitty-gritty aspects of aspects of the series. But I just have to really hammer in, if there's one thing you got to take away from the first Outrage movie, watch Otomo on screen at all times. He is very violent, because these are Yakuza movies. They aren't easy to watch, but if you're up for it, you will have a very strange experience watching the first Outrage movie and just seeing this old guy who wrote, directed, and edited the movie walk around and not give a dang about anything that's happening on screen. And something about that is so inherently funny that I can't not recommend this movie. So that's the original Outrage. When we come back after the break, I will jump into the second movie, Beyond Outrage. I'm beyond outraged that these movies exist. That wasn't fun. At any rate, stick around for after the break, where we jump into Beyond Outrage. 88.1 The Burg, your Music Central. Welcome back to What to Watch Wednesdays. My name is Nathan, and we are going to jump into the second movie on our watch list tonight, that being Beyond Outrage from 2012, available on Tubi and YouTube, free with ads, because ads make the world go round. Ads make the world go round. I feel like I should say it a third time, but I really don't want to, and so I'm not going to. At any rate, this is the sequel to the movie I reviewed during the last segment, which was the original Outrage from 2010. This one came out in 2012, so 2-year gap, not very long for a sequel, to be completely honest. It could have taken them, like, I don't know, 5 to 10 years. Instead, they took 2. Record time there. But at any rate, Beyond Outrage sequel, maybe it's not as good. Weirdly enough, I'd make the opposite argument, because it might be a little better than the original Outrage. I will say, I watched this movie over the course of 2 days. I kind of split it up. I watched half of it one night, the next half the next night. And for some reason, that, like, helped the pacing of the movie. And it also made it so that it was my favorite one in the series. I don't think I can think of any movie whatsoever that has benefited from doing that, ever. So that is strange. It's got that going for it. Beyond Outrage is the only movie that you can split up and actually get more out of the experience. To be completely honest with you, I think the reason this one kind of stands out is because it is still a convoluted plot like the first one. And like I said, I was giving you guys the cliff notes of the first movie's plot. It gets so much more deeply complex than that, with so many moving parts and so many twists and turns. This one is no different, but it feels a lot more like better put together, to the point where I can kind of compare the two and go, okay, the first movie was obviously setting up the second one. That's why it's super convoluted. The second one's still convoluted, but I do have some anchoring points to go, okay, this, like, for example, there's a character who was in the first movie who then shows up in the second movie, and I go, oh, I recognize him. I remember him being important in the first one. Is he important in this one? Yes? Okay, cool. You've got me. I feel like part of the reason it also held up is because normally when you split up a movie, you kind of have to get back into it. And I usually try to like measure movies based on how well I can kind of space out or just kind of take a break. And then when I come back to it, how easy is it for me to actually get right back into the action? And I was pleasantly surprised at how easily I was able to get back into the action of Beyond Outrage. I thought I was going to have to reread the Wikipedia article and have to figure out where I was in the plot again, because I was like, oh, there's been like 15 different twists up to this point. Am I going to remember it? Turns out I did. So good. And game, set, match, Takeshi Kitano, you're on. At any rate, I will give you guys kind of another sort of Cliff Notes version of it, but keep in mind, very condensed. At any rate, the main character of the original Outrage is back, played by Takeshi Kitano, writer, director, editor of the entire series, playing the character Otomo. Otomo has been thrown in jail, and that's his thing for maybe the first 40 minutes of the movie. Back in not jail, that's a great way of describing the setting of a place. Just say it's not jail. Okay, I can go with that. Back outside in not jail, his overruling family from the first movie, the Sanokai, are being taken over, going to war with the Hanabishi Yakuza. They are going at a gang war, and once again, this is condensed because there are about 15 different plot twists involving the boss of the Sanokai and him trying to work with the Hanabishi. And then there's like Otomo's like one friend after he gets out of jail, after about the 40 to hour mark. And then it's like from there, it's kind of convoluted, and it's all tied up in the dirty cop from the first movie pulling the strings behind everyone's backs, and everyone's just like always going to betray each other. And there's a lot of talking. It's like, it sounds so boring when I describe it. And yet keep in mind, as I said with the first one, the main draw of it is that it's written, directed, edited, and starring Takeshi Kitano, who I still think it's very funny that he plays the character who cares about the story the least. Otomo does not care anymore in this movie, and that really contributes to this one being the best one, because in the first movie, he didn't really care too much. He did care a little bit. In this one, he's like, no, I do not care at all. Just get out of my way. I'm leaving. Goodbye. And everyone's just like, what? You can't leave. And he goes, yes, I can. Watch me. And just imagine that, but a Japanese man saying it, not sounding like an American guy saying it in that exact tone of voice. It's so incredibly funny that he wrote the entire thing and yet plays the character who doesn't care about his writing. I feel like there's something to be said about that. And maybe it was kind of just for the fun of it, making it overly convoluted. I don't know, but if it was going to convince me, Beyond Outrage probably did it at this point. I think these movies are incredibly funny when you look at it from that angle. And once again, they do have they have things going for them. One thing I will get into when we review the last movie on our watch list is the editing style of Takeshi Kitano, because I keep saying, oh, he was the actor, he was the writer, but as an editor, Takeshi Kitano really does shine as well. And this movie is like the first two are really good at it. And so I think I'll save it for the third one where he doesn't do a good job because, oh boy, at any rate whatsoever, without getting ahead of myself too much more, I just gotta say that this movie, as long as you apply the trick from the first movie of only following Otomo throughout his journey, you will be fine. And in this movie, it is so easy to do because he's wearing a white suit this time around. He's on the cover of the movie wearing a white suit, just pointing a pistol downwards. You can't miss him. If you see him in the movie, just go, oh, there's the guy. I gotta just watch him on screen. He's the important one. Okay, cool. What's he doing? He doesn't care. Ha! At any rate, I need to stop saying at any rate. At any rate, it's going to do something at any rate. I don't know. Anyways, Beyond Outrage, favorite one in the trilogy for some weird reason that has never happened before. No, it has. It happened with Planet of the Apes. I'm getting ahead of myself again. Here's the point. Beyond Outrage is very good. And I don't know what they did to mess up Outrage Coda, but I will try my best to explain what they did after the break. So stick around for that. Welcome back to What to Watch Wednesdays. My name is Nathan, and we are going to jump into the last movie on our watch list tonight, that being Outrage Coda from 2017, available on Tubi with ads, because ads are amazing. They truly are, and I really like ads. At any rate, so as I've talked about tonight, I really like, but also don't like, the Outrage Trilogy, directed, written, edited, and starring Takeshi Kitano. I could jump into so much more about Takeshi Kitano and all of his other works, but judging by how much I can just rant about the Outrage Trilogy alone, I think it's safe to just call it and say, I'll just stick to this one, honestly, because I think going into his filmography extended-wise is something that I should save for What to Watch weekends, Saturdays from 9 to 11. No, this is not just a plug. I am being genuinely serious. This Saturday from 9 to 11 a.m. in the morning, I will be talking about the other works of Takeshi Kitano, and I will go further in depth to why I actually really like him as a director. But focusing on the Outrage Trilogy is what we're here for, and so let's close it off strong. Outrage Coda, with Coda meaning quite literally the end, very fitting name to be completely honest with you, is the third movie in the Outrage Trilogy, because it's the third one and it's a trilogy and it has to end because there's 3 of them. You know how numbers work. I'm assuming you do, otherwise you wouldn't be listening to this. Yeah, you wouldn't be listening to this because it's 881 the Burg. You gotta know how numbers work to type in 881 Burg, to be completely honest. That's not important. What is important is that Outrage Coda is the worst one in the series, not just because it's over, but because Takeshi Kitano quite clearly has given up on trying to make it any kind of weird meta thing. As I've tried to sort of hammer in the entire night, I think it's very funny that these movies have an overly convoluted plot only for Takeshi Kitano to cast himself and play the main character of the movie, a Yakuza by the name of Otomo, who doesn't care about any of the story. That to me is perfect irony, and it shows me something about the way these movies were made, because it seems very clear to me that Takeshi Kitano didn't care. And it was funny for 2 movies. Then when it gets to the third one, it stops being a funny kind of I don't care, wherein he actually probably cared about the story at least a little bit when writing the first 2 movies. He just cast himself as Otomo, the character who doesn't care about the story. It becomes, in this one, Otomo gives up, moves to South Korea, then has to come back for one last job to deal with the Yakuza once and for all. And it's very clear that even though Otomo has given up, it's not just him. because I think Takeshi Kitano definitely gave up while making Outrage Code. I think he was tired of it. He was just ready to be done, and it painfully shows, which is rather unfortunate because it doesn't necessarily make for a super happy viewing experience or a very enthralling one, to be completely honest. Now, as I said, it's just about him going to South Korea, coming back, dealing with the Yakuza for one last time. So I think, since I've gotten ahead of myself a lot of the time throughout the course of this night, I think it's nice to take a step back and really go over what these movies actually did right in the long run, because that's what I want to talk about. These are some of the things I think they actually did particularly well. So let's just talk about it. Aside from the overly convoluted storyline, the weird pacing, and just not being able to tell what's going on, even after reading the Wikipedia article for the plot, the best thing these movies do is having a cast of colorful characters. There are so many weird and wild Yakuza characters in all three of these movies, and Outrage Coda, the last one in the series, is the best one that does it. Like, it is the best at it. All of the weird underling Yakuza characters who aren't played by Takeshi Kitano, just like, and that's not even like he plays multiple characters. No, he just plays one. There's just a bunch of other people that I don't recognize by face because I'm just such a diehard Takeshi Kitano fan that I always recognize him. I just don't recognize a lot of the other actors. And they are all very, very over the top in this movie. It's so funny because while it becomes a little tiring to see Takeshi Kitano be done with everything, it can be very funny to see a character who was in the second movie and now carries over to the third movie just go, hey, boss, I'm going to go do a thing. Do you care? I'm lying back in my chair. I'm just like, hey, you care? I'm going to go do this thing. It is incredibly funny. And that is like the tamest it gets. There's this really hilarious scene where one of the Yakuza men is just like, huh? And just holding his hand up to his ear and just yelling, huh? There's a character who I think was just like the most brutish idiot you could possibly imagine for a Yakuza family. And he ends up living longer than he should. It's so funny. It's so funny to watch. And that it does in spades. There are so many other problems with Outrage Coda, but for that alone, it deserves props. But one of the things, as I said, there are things it does wrong. And as I've mentioned here and there, Takeshi Kitano did the editing for all three of the Outrage movies, including this one. And what made the first two very good, what made this one bad, is the lack of editing pacing. It's very clear from the first two movies that Takeshi Kitano's style is heavily reliant on letting a take play out for as long as it possibly can and then cutting. In more basic terms, it was not uncommon to see a scene in Outrage Way of the Yakuza, first one, 2010, or Outrage Beyond Outrage, second one, wherein a character enters a building, they walk through the door, and let's say the door is made out of glass. You would not see the camera cut away from the angle it was at until that character had walked completely off screen. That, to me, is stylized editing. That was a deliberate choice. That was, and I'm saying that with great confidence because I've seen I've seen a couple of Takeshi Kitano's other films, and that is a constant ever since one of the first big breakout one of his. That has been a consistent thing I have seen in all of Takeshi Kitano's movies, and yet this one doesn't have it. It is very clear that he's just rushing to get to the point, and he just kind of wants to fit everything in and then be done with it. And it really stands out when you see a very stylized editing choice where a character has to fully go through an entire action. And I know it sounds boring, but it's interesting to see a level of commitment to that kind of editing style. And so when it's gone, you actually start to miss it. That's what it is. It's not like it's particularly amazing to watch, but you notice it when it's gone. And when it's gone, something feels off. That is the biggest blemish that Outrage Coda has upon it, is that it doesn't feel like Takeshi Kitano really cares. And when he does care, it's amazing. It's stylized, it's there, it's weird and wild and goofy and comedic and dark and violent. And when it's not there, it really bleeds through and it really hurts the movie. And like I said, I would have so much more to talk about if we had the time for it. The best I can say is tune into this weekend's Watch Weekends from 9 to 11 a.m. because I have so much more to say about Takeshi Kitano, and we've only just scratched the surface. So, we're going to take a quick break for some music, and then we're going to close out the night, because I can't say anymore without probably exploding. So stick around.